Hello, Internet. This is the IPython Lab Meeting for September 18th, 2014. They're missing Brian and Fernando this week, so it will probably be a short one. Let's get started. Kyle, the WebSockets and cross-domain checking stuff.
Yeah, so I'm kind of wondering if we should revisit things. So remember how it was protected if they used auth because they were setting cookies?
Yeah.
They had the password stuff? And you had suggested long ago that you were like, should we just do that by default? And I was like, well, we can, but we should actually check the cross-origin stuff. And I'm kind of feeling like, for how people are setting these up, that we should just do the authentication checking.
So remove cross-origin checking altogether?
I know, I feel really bad saying it, but yes.
Which would... but that, under most circumstances, they're not authenticated.
Yes, I'm saying you pretend they're authenticated. I have no idea how. Like, we generate a key on initializing the server.
Okay, so we use cookie auth even when it's not authenticated, and we just set the cookie.
Yeah. I mean, does that work? I guess, but if anybody can, would you get set the cookie though if you tried to? Well, you can't cross-domain get like the notebook to get the cookie.
Yeah. So
the cookie from the API. Or can
and then you need to be over HTTPS, right? Then we need to get a certificate, and people have to click through a potentially malicious website is trying to show you something. Are you sure you want to continue? I thought that was a reason why we didn't did that.
I thought the tricky thing with doing cookies without authentication is that you need to, like, when you launch the browser, how does it? You need some way of getting the cookie to the browser securely.
Right.
I mean, if you just give the cookie to anything that visits that.
No, the thing is, we may not know if they're actually doing SSL termination somewhere else. And that's like where some of these issues have come up. Like if they have a load balancer that's doing the SSL termination, or Nginx or Apache, I guess, on some level we cheated it because we checked that these worked well with Node HTTP proxy and Nginx. We're like, okay, cool. And I was like, I don't even want to try Apache.
Yeah, well, it's usually the case that when you set up proxies, you need to do some kind of extra configuration of things behind the proxies. That's pretty much everything I put behind Apache. It needs to know that it's behind Apache in some way. But I even found, like, the reason I made the PR is because.
Oh, is it? It's still open.
Yeah.
I was happy with your PR.
Yeah, the reason I made the PR is
Pasted in
Jupyter Hub does.
Oh, that one. Oh, okay.
SSL terminate, but if you want to do HTTPS for the multi-user server, the normal thing that it does is SSL termination at the
proxy.
At the proxy.
Yeah.
And we were checking protocol in origin and host.
Yeah.
Which, but we can't get the protocol from host. Does not include the protocol. So you're assuming that the current connection.
Oh, right, and we reintroduced that.
So we're adding. So host is the network endpoint, and origin is the network endpoint plus protocol. And so we were adding the current requests protocol to host and comparing those, which is fine as long as there's not a proxy.
Yeah.
Which is why we didn't notice the problem. And then I looked at what Tornado's doing right now, and I could try to find the PR that made the change, but what my PR does is match current behavior of Tornado. Is that instead of adding the current request protocol to host and comparing those two, it takes the protocol off origin and then compares those two.
Yeah. And yeah, and it'll still check ports.
Yeah.
If you had it, yeah.
So I think doing this is fine, and I don't know, I'd leave the origin checking in. I just yeah.
Is that PR still open?
Yeah. I think. Yeah.
Maybe Thomas will look at it. I already said cool.
Okay.
I don't know which number that is.
Here's that one. It is 64.
6480.
Okay. That's the only thing anybody added to the docket before design stuff. Does anybody?
No.
Oh no.
Just had
locked cells. Let's get so we can spend undefined time on design things.
Let me pull up that pull request. Uh, 6488.
Yeah.
So I mostly just wanted to talk about, like, to get a sense of, for this type of change, like, whether that is something you guys want to do or not. Like, I want to talk more generally about, like, this type of stuff having to do with metadata, not necessarily specifically locked cells, but just to get a sense of that.
My position on most things like this is I think the execute preprocessor is a good example of something that gets prototyped and developed and just kind of fiddled around with in an extension or something.
Mm-hmm.
That then when people decide, yeah, that's working well, it makes sense to bring that in and basically let it live in an extension for a while we figure out whether it's something that
right.
Yeah, in general, I'd agree with that. In this particular case, I think it makes sense to put it into core because, I mean, if you have to say it's a thing to avoid accidental deletion, and if you have to say it only avoids accidental deletion if people have this extension installed, it kind of defeats the point a little bit. And I think it's something fairly simple and something that will probably be useful for a variety of tools. You know, anything where you want a cell that people fill in some variety has some special.
Yeah, although there is definitely some. I mean, there's already some disagreement about what locked even means because it makes perfect sense to say I want this cell to stay, but I don't want it to be. Basically I just want to prevent deletion, which is extremely narrow in scope and doesn't accomplish much, but it's useful for things like the NB grader stuff where you've got metadata on that cell and you really want to make sure it sticks around.
Yeah, I think in general, like, I can see, like, other types of preprocessors or extensions to IPython might want, like, to have cells that have metadata and then, like, give that notebook out to people in some form and then, like, get it back, and you want to be sure that that metadata is still there. So this is, like, I don't see a better way of doing that than something like this. But definitely, yeah, like, it is very narrow in scope. But I wouldn't want it to be, like, if it's locked, then you can't edit it either, because that's also kind of restricted.
Yeah, but that's also something that makes that I would say that's something that to me is on the same level as that's a perfectly reasonable thing that I want to give these people a notebook and they should only be able to edit this cell. They should be able to run the whole thing, but they can only edit this one bit.
That's true, yeah.
So it makes perfect sense to me, but which is I don't know. It's part of why I think I don't know. I
But how
acknowledge
useful
Tom.
would that actually be the uneditable case? Because I mean,
I don't know. It's been
very,
asked for dozens and dozens of times on the mailing list on GitHub.
But I mean, any way that we could do it is a very, very soft thing. Because,
well, this
you know,
is
you
a
can
very,
edit
very
the
soft
file.
thing, right?
Yeah. Well, but that's why.
Have a concrete case for something where, you know, this prevents you deleting the cell accidentally. I suppose you could say it prevents you editing the cell accidentally, but that seems a lot less useful than preventing you.
I mean, people in
deleting the
instructor
cell
situations have
accidentally.
been asking for it over and over again, so I presume they think it's a good idea.
So then, my next question would be: can you actually like have a notebook extension that like overwrites the like cell deletion behavior? Because
Yes, you monkey patch the JavaScript.
monkey patch JavaScript. Okay.
Yeah, I mean it's so
It's
notebook extension it's like an IPython extension. It's just so in a regular IPython extension, it's just a Python module where a function gets called, and it can do anything from just setting an attribute or changing a value to monkey patching IPython out and replacing it with IPython or something.
Okay. Yeah.
I guess the relevant point is we don't have any official API for that. I mean, we don't have any official API for anything in the JavaScript side at the moment. But monkey patching is generally not a good answer to the question.
But changing behavior, well, I mean, that's the whole prototype thing. In prototype languages, it's right and proper to just replace functions with other ones.
Okay, well, so maybe the right thing to do here would be to like, especially with the like the multi-user server, where you can, like force people to have their own extension or like a particular set of extensions installed. Maybe the right thing to do would be to rewrite this as an extension, test it out in that context, where everyone's going to have it, so it's not an issue of like people having to have the extension installed. And then if that seems to work out well, maybe like revisit it.
Yeah, if other people think this is a fine thing, we then that was just my initial perspective. So if people think that this should go in and be tested out in master, I think that's okay too. I might not use locked for whether it's deletable. I might use something
like deletable.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that.
Because locked can mean so many things.
Right.
And I don't think people will be confused by deletable equals false. So okay. Yeah, I guess I don't have much more to say on that. Do people think we should put this in master? Thomas says yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't see why it hurts.
Well, okay. Okay, we could just call it deletable if there's a negative. I was trying to think. The positive. There's some confusion if you make the value called deletable, and having it undefined mean true. Yeah, deletable false is okay.
You just have to do the JavaScript equivalent of .get.
Yeah, and that's already there. It's just I just mean from a understanding perspective. But yeah, no, I think that'll be fine. Okay. Now, logo stuff. The question of the moons. Question of the moons. Yeah. So Fernando has been getting tired of astronomy folks asking him where the fourth moon is.
Right.
My wife even asked.
Yeah. And the other point is that I've actually been using the logo in a couple situations on Twitter and in the Jupyter Hub stuff. And in those two cases, it's fairly small. I wouldn't describe it's not like favicon small, but the height, display height, I think is like 24 pixels or something.
Yeah.
in which case the smallest moon is much too small.
Okay, are the other moons okay, or is it just the smallest one?
I think they're big enough. I don't know. I feel a bit less sanguine about their placement now than I used to. But
Yeah.
That's,
well, if there's 4 now, like that's gonna probably change everything.
yeah, which I'm okay with.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those are the main things that have come up at this point.
Okay. Yeah, okay, so I'll play around with that, and then I will put in some different versions, and then get feedback from you guys.
Yeah. So I would give 4 moons a try and
Okay.
probably make. I see kind of 2 choices.
Mm-hmm.
One is have kind of multiple versions. One for small, but it turns out small doesn't actually have to be all that small.
Yeah.
And one for larger. And the other is that it would be kind of the current middle-sized moon is probably about as small as any feature should be able to be.
Okay.
That it can't really support anything smaller than that.
Okay, cool. I'll play around with that.
The 2. And that would be obviously the easiest because multiple versions is more kinetic. But
Right.
it's still something we can do.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah. I mean, I like started looking up where we can sell stuff, but I feel like we need to get the logo finished first.
Yeah. Sure.
But yeah. Any other feedback for that? Or are those like the 2 main things?
Yeah, those are the 2 main things that have hit for me. I guess the one other thing is that I've been using so we've got the monochrome gradient
Yeah.
in the logo file, the monochrome gradient and the 2-color gradient. There isn't a like 1 bit that's solid, just the shape.
Okay. Yeah.
But that's easy enough for me to do from the original, but might as well have it there.
Yeah, okay, I'll do that one too.
And maybe even a no gradient one with color, because there are some environments where gradients don't work well.
Yeah.
Like often on T-shirts and things, they'll say you can have up to 6 colors, but that
Right.
so maybe having a non-gradient version of colors might be worth having as well.
Okay, cool. I'll work on that as well.
Anybody else?
Nope, I think I'm happy with it so far. I mean, I haven't really. Lynn's the only one I think who's actually tried to use it.
Yeah, I've been because of working on the Jupyter Hub stuff. I've been looking at
Right.
it a lot, and
Yeah.
yeah, it's pretty nice. Just the little moons are
Yeah. Cool.
Okay. All right. Does that mean we're done?
You
We can
want to
call
talk
it
about the
Just
selling stuff?
Yeah, do you want to talk about the Cafe Press things?
Wait, what? Okay. I mean, the one that I found that would be the best is Cafe Press, but I haven't actually used it. I was just researching, and like that one offers everything that Fernando was talking about selling, and like looked the easiest to use. But if you guys have any others that maybe you've used to go or like to buy merch, but yeah, that's the main one I found.
Cafe Press is actually the what is there like? There are a number of T-shirt-centric ones.
Yeah.
Cafe Press is the main one that will
Yeah.
put an image file on everything.
Yeah, exactly.
I used Cafe Press to do physics student T-shirt long ago at Santa Clara, and it was fine.
Yeah, it just seemed pretty simple, pretty easy.
Okay. So we can probably go with that unless someone comes up with something preferable in some way.
Yeah, sounds good.
We should expect everyone to be sporting Jupyter t-shirts for the next dev meeting.
Yeah.
All right. in that case, I think we might be done here. Unless anybody has something sudden and exciting, and be greater, or at the notebook demo.
We should publicly congratulate Matthias.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Matthias, Dr. Matthias, would you like to say a few words?
In French. Did you end up having your defense in English or in French?
I still have a lot of paperwork to do, but I should be completely finished my PhD. It's something like 10 days, and then I could work, hopefully, full-time on IPython.
Yay!
And Jupyter, and really doing some good things for science.
Yeah. And what are you going to do in your free time? When you got on IPython's your job.
Right. Okay, so hope I will be able to come to the US in a few months to have meeting at a normal hour and not super late in the evening.
Yeah. Well, I look forward to having you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And
All right.
And bye, Internet.
Bye, Internet.
bye, Internet.